What was it like to be in the middle of this hurricane in Madison when the struggle over collective bargaining came down?
It was, in many ways, like a giant rock concert. It was tens of thousands of people crammed into a beautiful historic building, tens of thousands of more people on the grounds outside of there. They were there from the minute you arrived to the minute you left, and every second you were gone. You at times couldn't get through the crowd. There were times when you'd have to take a different route to get to a press conference because thousands of people would decide to sit down in front of the Senate chamber. So it was, it was like Woodstock, except it lasted for 30 days.
When the governor so-called dropped the bomb, what did you think was going to happen?
Oh, I knew it would be very contentious. I knew it would be very contentious, and I thought that it might not get through without significant changes, but I had no idea how contentious it would be. I thought it would be contentious on the scale of what had happened before at the Capitol, and it was like an order of magnitude bigger than anything that I had seen before.
And what was your biggest memory of those days of protests?
I mean, it was really the one that you were there that night. It was the night that a judge in Dane County ordered the Capitol clear of the protesters who had been there day and night for a couple weeks. And as the police surrounded that was what was then a small group of protesters in the rotunda and began stretching and putting on leather gloves, I began to think, okay, we're going to have a confrontation here in the seat of our state government. It didn't ultimately happen. The Capitol Police Chief talked the protesters out without any violence or arrests. And so I also remember just the great relief that I think everyone felt that night to know that another peaceful day had ended at the Capitol.
You both have reported about collective bargaining, about Act 10, over the course of months, now years. What do you know now that you didn't know then, and what are some of the revelations in the book?
Well, one thing that was interesting that we found out is that the Democrats were from the Senate were in Illinois for about 3 weeks. They left the state to prevent the bill from passing, at least for a time. And while they were down there, they were constantly moving around, and they would caucus every day to talk about what their strategy should be. One day they decided to meet at the Illinois Education Association office in Libertyville, Illinois. And while they were there, they had a visit from 3 union officials, including John Stocks, who was the incoming head of the National Education Association, the biggest union in the country. And Rich Abelson was there from the AFSCME local in Milwaukee. And they were making the case to the lawmakers that they should stay in Illinois, that that was working, that that was a way to stop this bill. Bob Jauch, senator from Poplar, didn't like that the caucus was meeting with an outside group and left the meeting. So he told his colleagues, I don't think this is appropriate, this is going to come out eventually and it's not going to look good on us, so he left.
On the Republican side, Governor Walker's administration had really prepared to pass their legislation in 1 week. And they were prepared to do that. They were prepared to deal with labor unrest at the state level, say prison guards not showing up to work. What they really weren't prepared for, what no one was the size and scale of the protests and having to work with local law enforcement who from a Democratic city of Madison to deal with those protests. One of the things that happened after that first week, we talked about the Capitol being occupied by demonstrators. The Walker administration gave an order on the Friday night of that first week to clear the Capitol of thousands of people. Instead, the police chief who was in charge of the Capitol interior said, we're not going to be able to do that. It's not practical to get it done, and it's dangerous in so many words. And the Walker administration ended up backing away from that order that would have been, according to this police chief, problematic.
Biggest winner of the whole incident, the whole chapter in Wisconsin history?
I think you have to say Scott Walker. He did become the first governor to win a recall election, third governor to face a recall, first one to win, won by a bigger margin than he had in 2010, and launched him onto a national stage where he was welcomed as a hero at the Republican National Convention, and now has, is named as a potential candidate in 2016.
Were there any other winners?
Well, there were certainly, there's certainly legislative Republicans came out very well because they were that summer able to pass redistricting legislation that has put them in a position, I think, to hold control of the legislature for years to come. Perhaps also President Obama, who made a strategic decision not to get involved in the recall effort, and we have a little more in the book about interactions between Democrats in planning the recall and the Obama administration, or the Obama campaign, I should say. So ultimately he made that decision, and he won his own re-election the following year.
Who were the biggest losers?
Unions, no doubt about it. I mean, the public sector unions in Wisconsin, Act 10 did not completely eliminate them, but it reduced their power dramatically. I mean, their role in the lives of people in Wisconsin will be dramatically diminished, is already dramatically diminished.
And though they have won a few small victories in the legal battles over Act 10 that continue to this day, largely the courts at state and federal level have left that law in place.
Final question. Governor Scott Walker, potential presidential contender, over the last 2 years, you've probably spent as much time with him and observing him as anyone. What's the main takeaway people should have, not just locally but nationally, about Governor Walker through this entire episode?
I think one thing that clearly you can see out of this is that there was an incredible amount of pressure on everyone who was involved in that struggle, from lowly reporters up to lawmakers, and on no one was that pressure more intense than on the governor. So one thing you could see from him is that he was able to remain extremely cool, to keep his rhetoric very focused and disciplined, even in the midst of really incredible pressure. So as you think about somebody who could deal with the rigors of a presidential campaign, I mean, that's something that I think people ought to take into account.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.